After 8 years under my roof, my daughter and her husband hit the lottery $95 million. That same night, my son-in-law fixed his eyes on mine and said, "Get the hell out of this house. This house is mine now." I didn't argue, I just smiled. And then I put one single question to him. The color drained right out of his face. I was going to strip him of everything he thought he'd gained, not out of cruelty, but because his greed had blinded him to how close he was to the edge. A quick note, this is a fictional story, built with dramatized elements for both experience and meaningful lessons. Any resemblance to real people or circumstances is entirely coincidental. The message, though, that part is real. 8 years I'd given that man a home. When Garrett finally told me to go, I smiled. Welcome to Honor Revenge Stories, where we sit with the stories that don't get told enough, the ones about ordinary people who refuse to be pushed aside. If this is your first time here, I'm glad you found your way. Go ahead and tap subscribe so the next story comes straight to you. Before we begin today, I'd love to know, what do you hope to carry with you from a story like this one? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. A quick note, some details in today's story have been shaped for the purpose of storytelling, and any resemblance to specific real individuals or events is coincidental. It's the truth underneath the story that matters. He didn't know about the second ticket. My name is Edmund Calloway. I'm 72 years old, and I gave 38 years of my life to the Oregon Department of Transportation as a civil engineer. I built bridges. Not only the kind that span rivers, though, I built plenty of those, but the kind that stitch people to their livelihoods, their families, their tomorrows. Engineering trains you to think about foundations, about what holds when the weight comes down and what gives way, about building for the long haul. I should have applied those same lessons to my own life. For a long time, I lived comfortably in a house at 3124 Ridgecrest Drive in Medford, Oregon. If you know this part of the state, you know Medford sits close to the Cascade Mountains, ringed by pine forest and high desert air. So clean, it almost hurts to breathe in the best way. Ridgecrest Drive runs along the quieter edge of town, where the lots are generous and the neighbors wave from their driveways. At night, you can hear the wind working through the trees. My late wife Lenora and I built that house with our own hands back in 1987. I handled the framing, and the foundation poured the concrete myself, with help from a buddy in construction. Lenora chose every tile, every shade of paint, every cabinet hinge. She planted the flower beds and set a row of young birch trees along the driveway. Over the years, those birches shot up tall and straight, their pale bark catching the moonlight. Lenora liked to say they were the bones of the house, the part that held the beauty in place. We were married for 41 years. She left us in the spring of 2015, pancreatic cancer. It moved without mercy. One day she was mentioning back pain, and 6 weeks later, she was gone. I can still feel the exact moment the doctor said there was nothing more they could do. Lenora took my hand and said, "Well, Edmund, I guess we'll just have to make the best of the time we have." That was her nature, steady, practical kind. When she was gone, the house turned vast and hollow. I kept her slippers beside the nightstand, left her side of the bed untouched. I'd drift through the kitchen half expecting the smell of coffee and find only silence. People told me the grief would ease. It didn't ease, it just changed shape. That autumn of 2015, my daughter Audra called. She was 30, married to a man named Garrett Fenwick. They'd been together since their college days, wed for about 2 years. Audra had always been my girl, the one who climbed onto my lap while I sketched bridge designs on graph paper and peppered me with questions. She was sharp and full of life. But something shifted after she married Garrett. The calls came less often, the visits fewer. When she did come around, Garrett always had some excuse to cut things short. That November, Audra told me Garrett had lost his sales job. They were falling behind on rent up in Eugene. She sounded worn down, frightened. So I did what any father would do. I told them to come home to stay with me until they found their footing. "Just a few months," Dad, Audra said, "until Garrett finds something." I believed her. They moved in just before Thanksgiving. At first, having people in the house again felt like warmth returning to a cold room. Audra cooked dinners, and Garrett helped me pull up some rotted boards on the back porch. We'd linger at the table after meals, talking about nothing much, weather, sports, holiday plans. It felt like family. Then the months stacked into a year. Garrett never found work. Or maybe he stopped looking, I couldn't tell. He spent longer and longer stretches on the couch, phone in hand, taking calls behind closed doors. Audra picked up double shifts at a medical office in town, dragging herself home too exhausted to say much. And gradually, I didn't register it, my house stopped belonging to me. Garrett started in with small remarks. You really should update this kitchen, Edmund. These cabinets are from the 80s. Or we could turn your workshop into a proper guest room if we cleared it out. I told myself at first he was trying to be helpful. Then I understood. He was measuring the place, taking inventory. Year 2 became 3, then 4, then 5. I kept waiting for the day they'd have enough saved to go. Kept thinking a good job lead for Garrett was just around the corner. It never came. Instead, I became the one who felt like a visitor. Garrett would shift the furniture around without a word. He'd have friends over, and I'd quietly withdraw to my bedroom. Audra stopped holding my gaze. If I caught her alone and tried to talk, Garrett would materialize in the doorway. Listening. That was 8 years of my life. I should have seen it sooner. I should have recognized how Garrett was steadily turning my daughter away from me, taking his ease in a house he hadn't built, a life he hadn't earned. But I didn't because I loved Audra, because I kept believing it would turn around. Then 3 months ago, I stopped at the Valley Mart on Highway 62 and bought 2 Mega Millions tickets, $2 each, $4 total. I handed one to Audra as a small gesture, a little gift. I kept the other. 3 days later, one of those tickets came up, worth $95 million, and that's when Garrett decided it was time for me to go. But Garrett made one mistake. He didn't know I'd bought 2 tickets. Let me take you back to where all of this truly began, back to the spring of 2015 when I lost Lenora. She was 60 years old. We'd had a trip to the coast mapped out for that summer. One of those unhurried drives down Highway 101, stopping at every small town, eating clam chowder, watching the waves roll in. Lenora loved the ocean. She used to say it put things in perspective, reminded you that the world was far larger than whatever was weighing you down. We never took that trip. The cancer moved too fast. By the time it was caught, the doctors could only try to keep her comfortable. I was beside her every day in that hospital room, holding her hand, talking about everything and nothing. She told me stories I'd heard 100 times. The day we bought the land on Ridgecrest Drive, the morning Audra arrived 3 weeks early, and I nearly missed a turn racing to the hospital. Even then, she laughed. On her last morning, she squeezed my hand and said, "Edmund, don't you dare turn into one of those old men who stops living. Promise me." I promised. 3 days later, we held her funeral at Rogue Valley Community Church. Audra came down from Eugene and stood next to me at the graveside, her fingers laced through mine. She wept quietly with her head against my shoulder. For a moment, I felt like I still had family, like I wasn't entirely alone. Then Audra went back, and I returned to that empty house on Ridgecrest Drive. The silence was unbearable. That fall November of 2015, Audra called. The strain was in her voice before she even reached the words. "Dad Garrett got laid off. We're behind on rent. I don't know what we're gonna do." I didn't think twice. "Come home, sweetheart. Stay here until you're back on solid ground." "Are you sure?" "I'm sure." 2 weeks on, they pulled up in a rented truck piled with their things. I helped Garrett haul boxes into the spare room. Audra hugged me on the front porch and whispered, "Thank you, Dad, just for a little while." I believed her. The first year or two weren't bad. Garrett would pitch in on projects, a leaky faucet, the weather stripping on the windows. Audra cooked Sunday dinners, beef stew, and cornbread, the kind of meal that fills a house with the right smell. We'd sit at the kitchen table after talking about the weather, Audra's job at the medical office, Garrett's search for work. It felt almost normal, almost like family. But somewhere around year 3, the ground began to shift, slowly at first. Garrett started moving furniture without asking. One afternoon, I came back from the hardware store and found Lenora's armchair, her reading chair, the one she'd settle into every evening, shoved out to the garage. When I asked, Garrett barely glanced up. "It didn't fit the space, Edmund. We needed room for the new TV stand." Then he turned to Lenora's things. The framed photographs I kept on the mantel came down replaced with bland prints from a department store. Her gardening tools vanished from the shed. When I brought it up with Audra, she looked past me. "Garrett thought it might be healthier for you, Dad. To move on, you know." Move on? I didn't say a word. I just set one of Lenora's photos back on my nightstand where Garrett wouldn't touch it. By years 4 and 5, the changes were harder to ignore. Garrett stopped asking my opinion about anything. He'd bring people over, friends of his I'd never laid eyes on, and I'd slip away to my bedroom. He started saying "our house" instead of "your house," as if he'd laid every board himself, as if he'd mixed the concrete with his own 2 hands. Audra stopped sitting with me after dinner. She'd disappear into their room, and I'd hear the two of them murmuring behind a closed door. I tried reaching her. I'd catch her in the kitchen in the mornings and say, "Honey, is everything all right?" She'd smile, but nothing behind it reached her eyes. "Everything's fine, Dad." But it wasn't. By years, 6, 7, 8, 2020, 2021, 2022, into 2023, I felt like a stranger under my own roof. Garrett would walk past me in the hallway without a glance. He'd make calls about repairs, about the yard, about painting rooms, and I'd only hear about it once the work was done. If I pushed back, he'd exhale like I was being tiresome. "Edmund, we're just trying to help. You're not getting any younger." I started spending most of my time in my bedroom, eating dinner alone, listening to their voices drifting from the living room, the laughter, and feeling the walls of my own house press in around me. My one relief was my neighbor Russell Drummond. Russell is 74, a retired postal worker with a dry wit and a stubborn streak that runs straight through him. He'd been my friend for over 30 years, ever since he and his wife Harriet moved in 3 doors down. Russell would stop by every week or so, some excuse about borrowing a tool, checking the weather, or wanting company over coffee. But I knew what he was actually doing. He was keeping an eye on me. One Tuesday morning in early April of 2023, I walked over to Russell's place. He was out in the garage wrestling with an old lawnmower. He looked up and grinned. "So, Edmund Calloway, haven't seen you in daylight in 2 weeks. Thought maybe you'd turned into a vampire." I managed a smile. "Just keeping busy." "Busy hiding in your room? You mean I didn't argue?" Russell wiped his hands on a rag and turned serious. "You know you don't have to live like this, right?" "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." We stood there a moment, neither one of us filling the silence. Then Russell dug 2 crumpled bills out of his pocket and held them up. "Tell you what, I'm heading over to the Valley Mart to pick up a Mega Millions ticket. Come with me, buy one yourself. Maybe you'll win and finally get yourself out of that damn house." I laughed. It was the first time I'd laughed in weeks. "Russell, I've never bought a lottery ticket in my life." "Then it's past time you did." So I went. And on that Tuesday morning in the first week of April 2023, I did something I had never done before. I bought a lottery ticket. Not because I needed the money, but because Russell dared me to. And because for just a moment, I wanted to believe anything could change. Those Mega Millions tickets cost me $4 each. Russell and I had a standing chess match most weeks, and Harriet always put on a pot of coffee and joined us at the kitchen table, book in hand, tossing the occasional dry remark at Russell's chess strategy. "You're getting predictable in your old age, Edmund," Russell said, moving his knight. "I've seen that opening 3 times this month." "And yet you still haven't beaten me," I replied. Harriet glanced up from her book and smiled. She's 71, sharp as a tack, silver hair cut short, and a laugh that fills whatever room she's standing in. "You two have been playing the same game for 30 years. She shook her head. "Honestly, I don't know how either of you stays awake." We played in comfortable silence for a stretch. Then Russell leaned back and said, "You see the Mega Millions jackpot's up to 95 million. I kept my eyes on the board. I don't play the lottery, Russell. I know, but maybe you ought to start. Could use a little excitement in your life." I moved my bishop. Checkmate in 3 moves. Russell groaned. "Damn it, Edmund." Harriet closed her book. "Russell, leave the man alone. If he doesn't want to throw his money away..." "It's $2, Russell broke in. $2 for a little bit of hope. Come on, Edmund, live a little. I'm heading to the Valley Mart after this. Come with me. I dare you." I looked at him. That stubborn glint was in his eye, the one that meant he'd keep at it all afternoon. And honestly, after 8 years of feeling invisible in my own house, maybe I did need something, even a lottery ticket. "Fine," I said. "I'll buy one." Russell grinned. "That's the spirit." An hour later, we pulled into the Valley Mart on Highway 62 in Russell's old Bronco. The place is a small, worn gas station with peeling paint and a buzzing neon sign reading open 24 hours. Clint Abernathy, the owner, was behind the counter. Clint's 58, heavyset with a graying goatee and a canvas work shirt. He looked up when we walked in and raised an eyebrow. Russell Drummond and Edmund Calloway together in the middle of the afternoon. This can't be good. "We're here to make you rich, Clint," Russell said, laying $2 bills on the counter. "1 Mega Millions ticket." Clint rang it up and slid Russell his ticket. Then Russell turned to me. "Your turn." I hesitated. Standing in a gas station at 72 years old buying my first lottery ticket felt faintly ridiculous. but I pulled out my wallet and set my debit card on the counter. Actually, Clint, give me 2 tickets. Clint blinked. Two. He printed them, ran my card, and handed them over along with the receipt. I folded the receipt and slipped it into my wallet. Then I looked at the 2 tickets. Just rows of numbers. Meaningless. I tucked them into my pocket and followed Russell back to the Bronco. 2 tickets, Russell said, starting the engine. Look at you, Edmund, high roller. Don't start. That evening, I went home. The house was quiet as usual. Garrett was in the living room with his laptop. Audra was in the kitchen cooking dinner, which surprised me. Most nights she worked late or ate in their room, but tonight she was at the stove stirring something in a pot. For a moment it called up the old days when Lenora used to stand in that exact spot, humming softly to herself. Hey, Dad, Audra said, without looking up. Dinner's almost ready. I pulled the 2 tickets from my pocket and stood there looking at them. On an impulse, I crossed the kitchen and held one out to her. Hey, I picked up a couple of lottery tickets today. Silly, I know, but here, take one. Audra turned surprised. She dried her hands on a dish towel and took the ticket. And for the first time in months, she smiled. A real one, small but genuine. Thanks, Dad. Who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe, I said. Garrett appeared in the doorway, arms folded. He looked at the ticket in Audra's hand and snorted. You bought lottery tickets. Seriously, Edmund? What are you trying to win back your dignity? He stepped over and plucked the ticket out of Audra's fingers, holding it up as if he were checking a counterfeit bill. Mega Millions 95 million. Yeah, good luck with that. Audra didn't say a word. She just turned back to the stove. I went to my bedroom, took the second ticket from my pocket, and slid it into the top drawer of my nightstand, alongside Lenora's reading glasses. Then I forgot about it. 3 days later, Saturday, April the 6th, Edmund was out in his workshop, planing a length of walnut he'd been shaping into a picture frame. Working with his hands kept him sane. He was lost in the grain of the wood when a scream came from inside the house. Not fear, shock, joy. He dropped the plane and moved quickly toward the back door. When he stepped inside, Audra was standing in the middle of the kitchen, shaking her phone in one hand, the lottery ticket in the other. We won, she whispered. We won 95 million. Garrett appeared behind her, moving fast. He pulled the ticket from her hand and rushed to the laptop on the counter loading the Mega Millions website. His eyes ran across the numbers once, twice. Holy hell, he breathed. We actually won. I stood in the doorway and watched them. Audra's hands were trembling. Garrett was already on his phone, pacing dialing. Yeah, I need to speak to someone about a lottery claim. Big one, 95 million. Neither of them so much as glanced at me. I stood there a long time while something strange settled in my chest. Not excitement, not joy, just a quiet, hollow ache. Because in that moment, I understood something I should have recognized years before. I had ceased to exist to them. I was a ghost in my own house. That evening I stayed out in the workshop until dark fell. When I finally came back inside, Garrett was at the kitchen table waiting. His posture had shifted. Gone was the polite tolerance he'd worn for 8 years, replaced by something harder. He sat with his arms folded. Audra stood at the sink with her back to me. What's going on? I asked. Garrett didn't rise. We need to talk. Our situation has changed. I stayed near the door. What do you mean? Audra and I just won 95 million, and this house no longer fits our lifestyle. The words hung there. Your lifestyle. That's right. Garrett leaned back, spreading his hands wide. We think you'd be more comfortable somewhere with staff and medical care, a senior living facility. We'll cover everything. All you have to do is sign over the property. Sign over the property. I looked at Audra. Sweetheart, what is this? She didn't turn around. She didn't make a sound. Garrett rose and moved to the counter. Let me be plain about this, Edmund. We don't need your charity anymore. We don't need you. This house is outdated. Bad plumbing, old wiring. We could sell it, tear it down. Either way, it belongs to us now. It's mine, I said quietly. Garrett smiled, not with any warmth. Actually, you may want to reconsider that. Because if you make this difficult, we'll pursue legal remedies, competency hearings, guardianship proceedings. You're 72, Edmund. You live alone, barely looking after yourself. A competent attorney could argue persuasively that you're no longer fit to manage your own affairs. My hands went tight. That's a lie. Is it? At your age, how many good years do you actually have left? 5, 10. Do you want to spend them fighting us? Because we will fight and we will win. I looked at Audra again. Please look at me. She turned, and for just a second I caught something in her face, guilt, maybe pain. But then Garrett laid his hand on her shoulder, and she looked away. "We're offering you a clean exit," Garrett said. "A decent arrangement. We'll set you up, cover your costs. All you need to do is cooperate. And if I don't, we do this the hard way. I've already begun keeping records. The times you've forgotten bills, the moments you've seemed confused, your isolation, your depression. A judge will see a man who needs looking after, and we'll be right there to provide it." My chest went tight. I couldn't breathe. Garrett smoothed his shirt. "Think it over tonight. We'll talk in the morning. Come on, Audra." He moved toward the hallway. Audra followed, head down, hands pressed together. She didn't look back. And then they were gone, and I stood alone in the kitchen Lenora and I had built together, and I felt like a ghost. I couldn't stay in there. I walked out the back door to my workshop. The smell of sawdust and varnish, the tools hung on their pegboards, the half-finished picture frame on the workbench. I switched on the light and stood there under the weight of Garrett's words. "We don't need you. You're no longer capable. How many good years do you really have left?" I lowered myself onto the old stool and buried my face in my hands. I felt small, powerless, afraid. I sat out there until full dark came on. Then I went back inside, past the kitchen where Garrett and Audra's voices murmured behind their closed bedroom door, and into my room. I sat on the edge of the bed, not my side, but Lenora's, an old habit. Whenever something difficult needed working through, I'd sit on her side as if she might still be there somehow. I studied the framed photo on the dresser, Lenora and me on our wedding day, young, full of hope. I felt so far from that man now. Garrett was right about one thing. I was 72 alone, with nothing obvious to stand on. Then my gaze drifted to the nightstand drawer. I hesitated. Then I pulled it open. Inside was a small envelope where I kept the things that mattered. Lenora's reading glasses, old letters, a little cash, and beneath all that folded in half was a slip of paper, the lottery ticket. My hands were unsteady as I smoothed it out. The numbers printed there were clear. I grabbed my phone and pulled up the Mega Millions results. The winning numbers filled the screen. I held the ticket alongside them and compared. They matched. Every single one. I sat there, heart hammering. Then I drew my wallet from my jacket. The receipt was still folded inside, proof that both tickets had been bought in a single transaction. I had purchased them both. Garrett had no idea. He believed the only winning ticket was the one he'd snatched from Audra, but he was wrong. I settled back on Lenora's side of the bed, the ticket in my hands. For the first time in 8 years, something moved through me that wasn't resignation. Anger, and underneath that, something stronger, hope. I thought of Lenora, how she'd rest her hand on my shoulder when I was tangled in a problem and say, "Edmund, sometimes you just have to trust the foundation. If it's solid, it'll hold." This was my foundation, this house, this life, the work of my own hands. I wasn't going to let Garrett take it. That night I slept with the ticket under my pillow. When morning broke, Sunday, April 7th, I picked up the phone and called Russell. "Russell," I said when he answered. "I need your help, Edmund." His voice was thick with sleep. "What's wrong?" "I need your help," I repeated. My voice wasn't steady. "Garrett, he's trying to take my house. He's threatening me with competency hearings." "But, Russell, I found something. The other lottery ticket. I bought 2. I still have mine." Silence. Then Russell said, "I'm coming over right now." "No, don't. Garrett and Audra are still here. Then come to my house." 5 minutes. He hung up. I grabbed the ticket, the receipt, my wallet, and my keys. I slipped out the back door and walked the 3 houses down to Russell's place. He was already out on the front porch in his bathrobe. "You look terrible," he said as I came up. "I feel terrible." He put a hand on my shoulder and steered me inside. Harriet was in the kitchen already, coffee going. She turned when she saw me, and her expression went soft with worry. "Edmund, honey." "What happened?" I sat at their kitchen table, the same one where Russell and I had played chess just 4 days ago, and told them all of it. The lottery win, Garrett's threats, the assisted living, demand the competency hearings, the second ticket. By the time I finished, Harriet's face had gone red with anger. "That snake," she said. "That absolute snake." And Audra just stood there. She said nothing at all. Russell leaned back, jaw set, arms folded across his chest. "You need a lawyer, a good one." "I don't know any lawyers." "I do," Harriet said. She had her phone out scrolling her contacts. "Petra Langford. She's Harriet and Russell's niece's daughter. Do you remember her? She came to our barbecue a few years back, sharp as they come, practices property and family law down in Eugene. Russell nodded. Petra's tough. If anyone can untangle this, it's her. Harriet dialed. 4 rings. Then a woman's voice came on. Aunt Harriet, it's early. Is everything okay, Petra? Honey, I'm sorry to call on a Sunday, but we have an emergency. It's our neighbor Edmund Calloway. He needs help. Can you see him today? A pause. Then Petra said, Tell me what's going on. Harriet passed me the phone. I laid it all out again quickly, clearly the way I used to present a design to the State Review Board. When I finished, Petra was quiet for a beat. Mr. Calloway, do you have the receipt showing you purchased both tickets in one transaction? Yes, and the second ticket is still in your possession. Yes, then you have a case. Can you be in Eugene by 11:00? I'll meet you at my office. I'll be there. She gave me the address and the line went dead. I handed the phone back to Harriet. She'll see you, Harriet said, pressing my hand. You're going to be all right. Russell got to his feet. I'm coming with you. No, I said. Thank you. But I have to do this on my own. Russell held my gaze for a long moment, then gave a slow nod. All right, but you call me the second you're finished. Understood. I will. I left their house and walked back to mine. Garrett's car sat in the driveway, the windows dark. I climbed into my truck, turned the engine over, and headed toward Eugene. The drive took 3 hours. Highway 62 south through the valley, then west on Route 20, up through the Cascade Mountains. The road threaded through pine forests and high desert scrub, past snow-capped peaks and wide open sky. I'd run this route 100 times during my years with the DOT. I knew every bend, every grade, every stretch where ice would lay down in winter. I thought about Lenora, about the day we'd driven this same road to pick out kitchen tile. She'd drifted off in the passenger seat, her head resting against the window, and I'd driven in silence, just watching her breathe. I thought about Audra, about the little girl who would climb onto my lap while I sketched out bridge designs, who would laugh when I let her hold the far end of the tape measure, like it was the most important job in the world. I thought about Garrett, the way he'd looked at me the night before, cold and calculating, like I was a problem to be disposed of. And then I thought about what I'd devoted my whole career to, building things that held when pressure came. Bridges, roads, foundations. Everything I'd ever constructed had one thing in common: a solid base. If the foundation was sound, the structure would stand. This house was my foundation. This life. And I wasn't about to let it crumble. I reached Eugene just before 11. Petra's office was downtown in a brick building near the river. I parked on the street and rode the elevator to the 3rd floor. Petra was waiting in the lobby. 42 tall, sharp-eyed, dark hair drawn back in a ponytail. She gripped my hand firmly. Mr. Calloway, come on back. Her office was compact, but professional law books along the shelves, framed diplomas on the wall. She waved me into a chair and sat across from me with a legal pad. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. I walked her through the tickets, the receipt, Garrett's threats, the competency hearings, the assisted living demand. I set the ticket and the receipt in front of her. She examined both, closely photographed them, took notes. When I was done, she leaned back and looked straight at me. Here's where things stand. Under Oregon law, the person who purchased the ticket is the owner, unless a signed agreement transferring ownership exists. You bought both tickets in a single transaction. You have the receipt. You handed one to your daughter as a gift. There was no contract, no sale, no formal transfer. The ticket your son-in-law is trying to claim belongs to you legally. The relief hit me like a wave. So, I have a case. You have a strong one, but we need to move quickly. We're going to file a notice of dispute with the Oregon Lottery Commission today. Right now, today. If we delay, Garrett could try to claim the prize and make everything more complicated. We need to get out ahead of it. She opened her laptop and started typing. For the next 2 hours, we worked side by side, drafting the notice, signing affidavits, assembling the evidence. At 2:47 that afternoon, Petra hit send on the electronic filing. Done, she said. The commission has been notified. Garrett can't claim that prize without a hearing. I stared at her. Just like that. Just like that. She closed the laptop and looked at me squarely. Mr. Calloway, when they find out about this, they're going to be furious. Are you safe at home? I'll be careful. If anything happens, anything at all, you call the police and you call me. Understood? Understood. I shook her hand and walked out. The drive home felt like a different trip entirely. The mountains were unchanged. The road was the same. But I wasn't. The defeated feeling was gone. I felt armed. I pulled into Medford just after 7. The sun was going down, dragging orange and pink across the sky. I turned onto Ridgecrest Drive and saw the lights burning in my house. Garrett's car sat in the driveway. I parked and approached the front door. Before I could get it open, Garrett filled the hallway, phone in hand, his face scarlet. "What the hell did you do?" he said. I'd seen Garrett angry before, but this was a different kind, not the cold, calculated anger from the night before. This was the fury of a man who'd already started spending money that wasn't his. His voice filled the house before I could even get the door shut. Our lawyer got the notice. "You want to explain this?" He was planted in the hallway, blocking my way, phone still gripped in his fist. Face flushed, jaw clenched, the vein in his temple standing out. I set my keys on the table by the door and held his gaze. "I don't owe you an explanation. You filed a dispute claim," Garrett said, his voice climbing. "You're trying to steal our money. I'm not stealing anything," I said, keeping my voice level. "I bought both tickets. I have the receipt. You gave one to Audra, you can't reclaim a gift. I gave Audra a ticket. Not the winning ticket, that ticket is mine." Garrett moved closer. "You think a judge is going to buy that? You think anyone believes you just happened to keep the winning ticket for yourself?" I walked past him into the living room, my legs held steady, my hands stayed still. I sat down in Lenora's old armchair, the one Garrett had moved to the garage years back, the one I'd quietly carried back in last month. I sat in it now and claimed my space. Garrett followed me, planting himself over me with arms crossed, the power stance of a man who expected to get his way. "Here's what's going to happen. Edmund," he said, "first you're going to withdraw that claim today, because if you don't, we will make your life a living hell." I looked up at him. "Is that a threat? It's a fact. We have resources now. Real money. We can drag this out for years. Lawyers, depositions, appeals. How old are you?" "Edmund, 72. "At 72, do you honestly think you'll outlast this fight?" I didn't answer. Garrett bent down, both hands on the armrests of my chair, his face close to mine. "I've been keeping notes, Edmund. Worrying behaviors, memory lapses, the time you left the stove on, the bills you forgot to pay, the way you walk around talking to yourself." My chest went tight. "I have never left the stove on." Garrett smiled. "Are you certain? Because my notes say otherwise. Dates, times, witnesses. That's a lie. Is it? Or is it just the slipping memory of an old man who can't manage his own affairs anymore?" Garrett straightened and put his hands in his pockets. "We can establish that you're incompetent, Edmund. We can establish that you need a guardian. And once we do, every decision you've made, including this dispute, disappears." A sound came from the doorway. Audra was standing there, arms folded across herself, her face drained of color. "Garrett," she said softly, "stay out of this." Garrett snapped, not even turning to look at her. Audra flinched but held her ground. She stood there, watching, her eyes moving back and forth between Garrett and me. I got to my feet slowly. My knees ached, but I didn't let it show. I looked Garrett in the eye. "This conversation is finished," I said. Garrett's smile spread wider. "You're going to lose everything, Edmund. The money, your daughter, your dignity, all of it." I headed for the door. As I passed Audra, I stopped for a moment. She looked at me, and for just an instant I could see the little girl, the one who had held my hand at Lenora's funeral. Then I kept walking. "You can't win this." Garrett's voice came after me. I stopped at the hallway threshold and turned back. "My dignity is mine, Garrett. That's not yours to take." I went to my bedroom and pulled the door closed. For a long while I sat on the edge of the bed and listened. Garrett and Audra's voices came through in low murmurs. Then they rose. Audra was saying something. The words didn't carry clearly. And then Garrett cut across her, his tone hard and sharp. Then I heard Audra crying. Garrett's voice climbed. "He did this, not us. He's the one tearing this family apart." I shut my eyes. At 9:00, my phone buzzed. A text from Petra. "Are you okay?" I typed back. "Yes," he threatened me. "Competency hearings, guardianship." Her reply landed immediately. "Document everything. Write it down. Dates, times, exact words." I pulled an old notebook from my desk drawer, one I'd used years back for project notes, and started writing. Sunday, April 7th, 2023, 7:15 p.m. Garrett confronted me in the living room. Said he's been documenting concerning behaviors. Claimed I left the stove on false. Claimed I forgot to pay bills false. Threatened to prove I'm incompetent. Threatened guardianship proceedings. Said they could drag the lawsuit out for years. Audra was present but said nothing. I wrote for 20 minutes, setting down everything I could recall. Garrett's exact words, his body language, the lies he'd told, the threats he'd made. When I finished, I stared at the page and slowly a realization settled over me. Garrett hadn't only started keeping records after the lottery win. He'd been laying groundwork for a long time, months, maybe longer. The notes he'd mentioned, the witnesses, none of it was real. But the very fact that he'd thought to threaten me with them told me everything. He'd been preparing, biding his time, waiting for a moment when he could seize control. The lottery win had simply moved up his schedule. I set the notebook on the nightstand and stretched out on the bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Every sound in the house put me on edge. Each creak of the floorboards felt like footsteps closing in. When morning finally arrived, Monday, April 8th, I was up before sunrise and had the coffee going. I sat at the kitchen table with the notebook open in front of me and waited. At 9:00, my phone rang. The voice on the other end was about to change everything. The woman identified herself as Nadine Holcroft from Umpqua Bank. "Mr. Calloway, I'm the assistant branch manager. I'm calling about a power of attorney filing we received yesterday afternoon bearing your name with Garrett Fenwick, listed as your designated representative." I stood there in the kitchen, phone pressed hard against my ear, the floor seeming to drop out from under me. I never filed a power of attorney. A pause. "That's what we suspected. The signature didn't match the one we have on file for you. We rejected the application and flagged the account. Mr. Calloway, someone attempted to forge your signature." My grip on the phone tightened. "Who submitted it?" The name on the submission was Garrett Fenwick. If this document had been accepted, it would have given him full legal authority over all your accounts, checking savings, everything. He could have transferred funds, closed accounts, taken out loans in your name. I dropped into a chair. My chest went tight. I couldn't draw a breath. Garrett hadn't just threatened me. He'd tried to take everything, every dollar I had, my pension, the savings Lenora and I had built over 40 years. If the bank hadn't spotted that forged signature, if they'd run the paperwork through, Garrett would have emptied me out before I had any idea it was happening. "Mr. Calloway, are you still there?" "Yes," I managed. "I'm here. I'm emailing you a copy of the document right now," Nadine said. "You'll want to show it to your attorney. And Mr. Calloway, you should file a police report. This is criminal fraud." "I will, thank you." I hung up and sat there staring at the phone on the table. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Garrett had done this yesterday, the day after I filed the dispute claim. Less than 24 hours after our confrontation in the living room, he'd gone to the bank and tried to forge a power of attorney. Was this retaliation? Or had he been working toward this all along? The fear that had been lodged in my chest for days began to move. Slowly it hardened into something else. Anger. At 9:15, I called Petra. He tried to forge a power of attorney. I said, my voice unsteady. The bank caught it. They rejected it, but he tried. Petra was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's criminal fraud. Forgery. This changes everything, Mr. Calloway." "What do I do?" "Call the bank back. Get that document. Email it to me right away. Then go to the Medford Police Department and file a report today. Don't wait, okay? This is good. Mr. Calloway, I know it doesn't feel that way, but this is evidence. Hard evidence that Garrett is willing to break the law to get what he wants. We can use this." I called the bank back. Nadine confirmed she'd sent the email. It landed in my inbox at 10:30. I opened it on my laptop, heart hammering. The document was a standard power of attorney form. My name was typed at the top. Garrett Fenwick's name appeared as the agent, and at the bottom, in careful, practiced handwriting, was a signature that looked nearly like mine. Nearly. But it wasn't. The slant was off. The loop on the M was too broad. Garrett had tried. He'd rehearsed it. That much was plain. But he hadn't quite landed it. I studied that signature for a long time. This was no mistake, no misunderstanding. This was deliberate, calculated. Garrett had sat down somewhere, maybe right here in my house, maybe at some coffee shop across town, and practiced writing my name until he thought he had it cold. Then he'd carried that form to the bank and lied. I forwarded the email to Petra. Her reply came back within minutes. "This is gold. See you at the mediation?" That afternoon, I drove to the Medford Police Department. The building was low brick, a flagpole out front. I walked in and told the officer at the desk I needed to report attempted fraud. They put me with a detective named Pickett, a man in his 50s, gray-haired with a calm and patient way about him. He listened as I laid it all out. The lottery tickets, the dispute, the confrontation, and now the forged power of attorney. I showed him the email from the bank. Pickett took notes, asked questions, went over the document carefully. When I'd finished, he leaned back and fixed me with a steady look. "Mr. Calloway, this is a felony. Forgery, attempted fraud. If we can establish that Mr. Fenwick submitted this document, knowing it was false, he could face criminal charges." "I want that on record," I said. Pickett nodded. "We'll open a case. I'll contact the bank, get their statement, pull the security footage if it exists. This takes time, but we'll follow through." He slid a receipt across the desk with a case number printed at the top, 2022 MF03892. "Hold on to that," he said. "And Mr. Calloway, watch yourself. A man willing to forge legal documents, there's no predicting what else he might try." I folded the receipt and tucked it into my wallet right beside the lottery receipt. "Thank you," I said. I drove home slowly, that case number sitting heavy in my pocket. When I turned onto Ridgecrest Drive, the house looked exactly as it always had. The birch trees Lenora had planted swayed in the breeze. The porch light was burning. Garrett's car sat in the driveway. But something had shifted. I wasn't simply defending myself anymore. I was armed. I had filed the report. What I kept to myself was this: Garrett Fenwick ought to be careful now because I had proof he was willing to commit a crime. Garrett came home that evening with flowers, cheap supermarket flowers wrapped in cellophane. It was 6:30. I was at the kitchen table with my coffee when I heard his car ease into the driveway. The front door opened. He appeared in the kitchen doorway holding that bouquet out like a peace offering. "Ed," he said. His voice was soft, conciliatory. "I think we got off on the wrong foot." I didn't say a word. I just looked at him. Garrett laid the flowers on the counter and pulled out a chair. "May I?" I nodded. He sat down across from me, hands folded on the table. "I want to apologize." I was overwhelmed. The lottery, win the pressure, all the legal back and forth. It got to me. I didn't mean what I said. I took a slow sip of my coffee. "Which things?" "About the house. About competency hearings." I was angry. I wasn't in my right mind. He leaned in, his expression open and earnest. "Ed, your family. Audra and I, we don't want to be at war with you. We want to work something out." I set my cup down carefully. "Work what out?" "All of it." Garrett opened his hands. "Look, I know there's been friction, but this doesn't have to stay that way. You stay here. This is still your house. We set up an account, $5,000 a month just for you. All you have to do is drop the dispute claim." I didn't move. I just watched him. "In exchange for what?" I asked. "In exchange for acknowledging that the lottery ticket was a gift," Garrett said smoothly. "You gave it to Audra. We won, and in return, we look after you. $5,000 a month, Ed. That's $60,000 a year tax-free, more than your pension. You could travel, put money into the house, whatever you like." He smiled. It almost looked genuine. "We could be a family again," Garrett went on. "Sunday dinners, game nights, just the way Lenora used to do it." My jaw went tight. "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't what?" "Don't bring my wife into this." Garrett blinked as though that surprised him. "I'm just saying." "You threatened me," I said, my voice level. "You tried to forge a power of attorney to drain my accounts, and now you think a handful of gas station flowers and a monthly payout makes that go away." Garrett's smile slipped just for a second. Something moved behind his eyes, something cold. Then he eased back in his chair and crossed his arms. "You really want to fight us?" he said. The warmth was gone from his voice. "I'm not fighting anyone," I said. "I'm protecting what's mine." "What's yours?" Garrett gave a short, flat laugh. "You're 72 years old, Ed. You're living in the past. You hold on to this house because it reminds you of a woman who isn't here anymore. Lenora is gone. Before we go any further, I need you to understand what was really at stake in that room, and what I was about to find out about someone I had trusted with everything. It changes the weight of every moment that follows. Tell me in the comments, if you discovered someone close to you had been quietly working against you, would you confront them head on, or would you wait and build your case in silence? She's been gone 8 years, and you're still sitting here acting like she's about to walk back through the door. I pushed up from my chair, the legs scraping hard against the floor. "Get out," I said. Garrett rose too. He had height on me, and he used it. He looked down at me with something that came close to contempt. "You could have had a comfortable life," he said. $5,000 a month, no worries, no lawyers, but you'd rather die broke and alone, holding on to your pride. I'd rather die with my dignity intact. Garrett held my gaze for a long moment. Then he shook his head. You're going to lose everything, he said. The money, your daughter, this house, all of it. And when that happens, don't come back and tell me I didn't offer you a way out. He moved toward the door, then stopped and glanced back. You know what your problem is, Ed. You think stubbornness is the same as strength. It isn't. It just makes you sad. He left. The door slammed shut behind him. I stood in the kitchen listening until his footsteps died away down the hall. Then I picked up those flowers, the cheap cellophane-wrapped ones from the supermarket, and dropped them straight into the trash. I sat back down at the table. My hands were trembling, but not from fear, from anger. Garrett had tried threats. That had gotten him nowhere, so he'd pivoted to manipulation, bribery, working my emotions against me. And when that failed too, the mask had slipped, and the real man looked back at me, cold, calculating, certain that money could open any door, and that I was weak enough to walk through it. He was wrong. I turned over what he'd said about Lenora, about me clinging to the past. Maybe there was a grain of truth in it. Maybe I was holding on. Maybe this house, these memories, this life. Maybe part of it was just a way of keeping something alive that was already gone. But it was mine, my past, my memories, my home, and I'd be damned before I let Garrett Fenwick pry it away from me. I went to bed that night and lay on my back staring at the ceiling in the dark. I knew Garrett wouldn't stop. Men like him never did. When threats failed and manipulation failed, they reached for a new tool, a new angle of attack. But for the first time since Lenora had passed, something steadied inside me. I remembered who I was, Edmund Calloway, engineer, builder, a man who had come through worse. I'd designed structures that held under load. I'd built a home that had stood through 36 years of hard weather. I'd built a life with Lenora that Garrett couldn't touch and would never understand. He wasn't going to break me now. The following Tuesday, someone knocked at my door. A firm, purposeful knock, the kind that lands in your stomach before you've even reached the handle. When I opened it, a woman stood on the porch with a clipboard and a county ID badge clipped to her jacket lapel. She was in her early 40s, dark hair pulled back tight with tired eyes that had seen more than their share. Mr. Edmund Calloway, she asked. Yes. My name is Cecilia Varga. I'm an investigator with Jackson County Adult Protective Services. We received a report regarding your welfare. I'm here to conduct an assessment to determine whether you're safe and able to care for yourself. My stomach clenched. Garrett. Who filed the report? I asked. I'm not able to disclose that, Cecilia said. May I come in? I wanted to say no. My first instinct was to close the door and call Petra, but I knew that would only hurt me. Refusing would look like I had something to hide. Of course, I said, and stepped back. Cecilia came into the living room and settled on the couch. She placed the clipboard on the coffee table and uncapped her pen. Mr. Calloway, I'm going to ask you some questions. Just answer as honestly as you can. There's no pass or fail here. I simply need to understand your circumstances. I sat down in Lenora's armchair. My hands were still. My heart was not. What's today's date? Cecilia asked. Tuesday, April 16th, 2023. And who is the current president of the United States? I answered. She kept going. Where did I live? How long had I been here? What work had I done? Any medical conditions? Any medications? I answered every question clearly and precisely the way I used to present project findings to the state board. Mr. Calloway, the report we received mentioned memory loss and confusion. Have you experienced anything along those lines? No, I said, firmly, never. Do you manage your own finances? Yes, bills paid on time. I balance my checkbook every month. Done it for 40 years. Do you prepare your own meals? Yes. And you share this house with your daughter and her husband. They live here, I corrected. This is my house. I asked them to stay 8 years ago when they were going through financial difficulties. Cecilia wrote in her notes. I couldn't read her face. Mr. Calloway, would you be comfortable letting me look around just to get a sense of the living environment? Go right ahead. We moved through the house together. The kitchen first counter's clean refrigerator stocked with fresh milk, eggs, vegetables, leftovers in labeled containers, stove, spotless, not a burner left. On, not a trace of neglect. Then the bathroom, clean organized towels folded the medicine cabinet. Neat. My blood pressure medication lined up in a row, with the date marked on each bottle. Then my bedroom bed, made clothes put away Lenora's photograph on the nightstand. the lottery ticket still tucked in the drawer beneath it. Finally, we went out to the workshop. Cecilia stepped inside and slowed. The tools hung on pegboards, every one in its place. The bench was clean sawdust swept away. Along the shelf sat a row of pieces I'd made over the years: birdhouses, small boxes, a carved bowl. Cecilia lifted one of the birdhouses and turned it over in her hands. "This is beautiful. You still do this?" "It keeps my hands busy," I told her. She set it down with care. "Mr. Calloway, I've been doing this work for 12 years. I know the difference between someone who genuinely needs help and someone who is being targeted. You are not the person that report described." The relief moved through me like a wave. "So, you'll close the case?" "I still need to speak with your neighbors and your family members," Cecilia said. "But based on what I've seen here today, there's nothing to suggest you're unable to look after yourself. Your home is in order. Your thinking is clear. Your physical health appears sound." She paused at the door and held out her business card. "If you ever do need real help, call me." "Thank you." Cecilia left. I closed the door and leaned against it, and that's when my hands finally gave way and began to shake. I'd held myself together through every question, every room, every test. But now, standing alone in the quiet of my own house, the humiliation came crashing down. I'd had to prove I was competent. In my own home to a stranger, I'd had to demonstrate that I could feed myself, manage my money, keep a clean room, that I wasn't lost or dangerous or falling apart. At 72 years old, I'd been made to feel like a child whose fitness for life was in question, and Garrett had done this. He had filed that report. I was certain of it. He'd called Adult Protective Services and told them I was a danger to myself, hoping they'd step in and declare me unfit and hand guardianship over to him. I walked to the kitchen and ran myself a glass of water. My hands were still unsteady. I knew Cecilia would interview Garrett next, and I could already see it. He'd be calm, worried-looking, all concern and sorrow. He'd describe my supposed memory lapse as the confusion, the time I'd allegedly left the stove on. He'd build the portrait of a frail old man who'd lost his grip on reality. And he would be utterly convincing. For the first time since all of this had started, I felt a fear of a different kind. Not losing money, not losing the house. The fear of losing my independence, my right to make my own choices, live by my own rules, in my own home. That was the real thing Garrett was after. Not just the money, my freedom. Cecilia spoke with Russell and Harriet the next morning. Russell called me the moment she was gone. "That son of a, he tried to have you declared incompetent." His voice was loud and hot with fury. "She just left. She asked us everything, your memory, your habits, whether we'd ever seen you confused or acting unsafe." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you're sharper than most of the engineers still on the job out there." Harriet told her Garrett Fenwick ought to be ashamed of himself. "We told her the truth, Ed, that you're fine, that this whole thing is a disgrace." I shut my eyes. "Thank you." She asked whether we'd be willing to testify if it came to that. I said absolutely. Russell paused. "You're not alone in this, Ed. You hear me? I hear you." Later that same afternoon, a knock pulled me back to the front door. Standing on the porch was Pastor Dolores Wentworth. 67 years old, recently stepped down from Rogue Valley Community Church, silver-haired with the kind of settled, unhurried presence that had held our congregation together for 3 decades. She'd been close with Russell and Harriet for years. "Edmund." She wrapped her arms around me before I'd said a word. "Harriet rang me. I needed you to hear it from someone face to face. This community is behind you. The church is behind you." She settled at the kitchen table, reached into her bag, and set a thick folder between us. 16 years I've known you," she said, "going back to when Lenora and I were both on the missions committee. I watched you be a faithful husband, a devoted father, a man your neighbors could count on. And after Lenora went, you bore that loss without falling apart." She lifted the folder's cover and fanned out 10 handwritten letters across the tabletop. "Every one of these is from someone at Rogue Valley Community. People who know you well. People who will stand up and say so under oath if it comes to that." I looked at them laid out there, something pressed against the back of my throat. I lifted one, a letter from Tom and Susan Reed, a couple to 2 streets over, who I hardly knew beyond a wave. They described seeing me at the hardware store nearly every Saturday for years. Always sharp, always courteous, always glad to talk through a project with whoever asked. They'd written that they would help however they could. Now my eyes burned. Why would they bother? Dolores slid her hand across the table and closed it over mine. Because Lenora mattered to people, and so do you. Come. Thursday morning, April 18th, Cecilia was on the phone. Mr. Calloway, I'm closing the case. The report has been found unsubstantiated, no evidence of cognitive decline, no evidence of self-neglect. In my professional judgment, you are entirely capable of managing your own affairs. Something loosened in my chest. Thank you. I spoke with your son-in-law yesterday, she went on. He put forward a number of allegations, memory lapses, confusion. Not a single one held up. Every person I contacted described someone quite different from the picture he painted. So what happens from here? I'm documenting in my report that this filing appears malicious and tied directly to a financial dispute. If Mr. Garrett Fenwick submits another complaint without genuine grounds, he will face legal consequences. I sat there with the phone against my ear, relief on one side, fury on the other. Garrett had reached for my autonomy, my independence, and come up empty. Thank you, Cecilia. Watch yourself, Mr. Calloway. Russell and Harriet had me over that evening. When I stepped through the door, I discovered it wasn't just the three of us waiting. Pastor Dolores was already there. So were Jim and Carol Patterson, neighbors I'd been friendly with for the better part of 20 years. Figured you'd had enough of your own company, Harriet said, steering me toward the table. She'd outdone herself. Beef stew, roasted carrots, homemade cornbread, the sort of spread that fills a kitchen with warmth and puts you back in an earlier, simpler time. Lenora used to put out a meal like that on Sundays. We pulled up chairs, and somewhere between the first bowl and the second, I felt something settle in me that had been loose for months. Since Lenora died, I hadn't felt it. I felt seen. Russell lifted his glass. To Edmund Calloway, the man who won't roll over and let some punk walk off with his house. Laughter went around the table. We clinked glasses. Food passed. Conversation wandered the weather. Lately, the Blazers' Dolores' newest grandchild, Jim's plans once he finally stopped working. Nobody mentioned the lottery. Nobody said Garrett's name. They weren't there to rehash any of it. They just let me sit among them as a neighbor, a friend, a person. Somewhere in the middle of the evening, I glanced around and felt my chest go tight in a way that had nothing to do with dread. After Lenora died, I said, keeping my voice low, I was lonely. When Audra and Garrett came to stay, I thought the house would feel full again. It didn't. They were in the rooms, but they weren't really there, not for me. They looked past me like I wasn't worth the effort. I stopped, swallowed. But sitting here right now, you people actually see me. Harriet pressed the back of her hand to her eyes. Russell cleared his throat, shifted in his chair. Enough of that, he said, voice gone rough. Eat your stew. I stayed well into the evening drying dishes beside Harriet, while Russell and Jim wrangled over baseball in the next room. Walking home afterward, I noticed the stars hard and bright overhead, in the way they only get out here in the high desert. I slept that night without waking once. Hadn't managed that in months. Friday, April 19th, an email from Petra was waiting when I got up. Mediation had been confirmed Thursday, May 2nd, 10 a.m. Oregon Lottery Commission Headquarters, Salem. Be ready, this is it. I read through it 3 times. Then I stood at the window with my coffee and looked at the birch trees Lenora put in 36 years ago. This was the moment. All of it came down to what happened in that room, and I wasn't afraid. That whole final week felt like the approach to something enormous. Petra checked in daily. Monday, April 22nd, she walked me through what to expect. It's structured not a courtroom, but don't mistake it for casual. A neutral mediator runs the session. Norton Graves, he's Garrett's attorney, presents their side first. Then I lay out ours. You'll be asked questions directly. Keep your answers short and honest. Don't wander. Don't let the emotion run ahead of you. Graves is going to push. He'll want the room to see a bitter, confused old man grasping at money. Give him nothing to work with. I'll do my best. That'll be enough, Mr. Calloway. Tell the truth and let it do the work. Tuesday, she put me through my Paces practice questions back and forth. Why did you hand that ticket to Audra? She's my daughter. It was a small thing, a spontaneous gesture. Winning wasn't anywhere in my mind. The ticket cost $2. Did you tell her it was a gift? I said, here, you can have this. Did you expect it back if the numbers hit a beat? No, the thought never crossed my mind. It was impulsive, nothing more. Good, that's your answer. Own it. Wednesday was documents. Petra went through the whole stack methodically. The Valley Mart receipt showing both tickets purchased together in one transaction. My bank record with the debit charge. The forged power of attorney bearing Garrett's name. The Medford Police Department report? Cecilia's written finding that the Adult Protective Services complaint was a malicious filing. Norton Graves has seen every bit of this, Petra said. The forgery, the false APS report. My read is he knows this case is badly compromised, but he's counsel of record now, so he rides it out. Sleep wouldn't come that night. I lay on the edge of the mattress, staring up at nothing, the same thoughts circling. Audra was my daughter. If the mediation went my way, she walked out of that room, having lost $95 million. Nothing. And there was a real chance she'd never forgive me, maybe forever. I got up and moved through the dark house, into the living room, where Lenora and I used to sink into the couch for old movies, into the kitchen, where I could still almost hear her humming over the stove, down the hall past the framed photograph, the three of us, me and Lenora and Audra, maybe 10 years old, all of us laughing on a beach somewhere. These walls my work, these floors my hands. This place was Lenora and me poured into wood and plaster. Our effort, our hope. And Garrett had stood in my kitchen and told me to get out. I moved to the bedroom and settled on Lenora's side of the bed, the place I always went when I needed to think clearly. This house is you, Nora, I said to the dark. Everything in it is. And that man told me to leave what we built. I shut my eyes. This isn't about the money. It never was. It's about whether a man gets to keep his dignity, his home, his right to his own life. I let myself hear her voice the way I always could when it was quiet enough. Even-keeled, warm, unshakable. You've never walked away from the right thing, Edmund. This isn't the time to start. Wednesday morning, May 1st. My eyes opened at 5:30. I gave myself a minute flat on my back, then swung up and got in the shower. I took care with how I dressed: a white button-down, dark slacks, the jacket I'd put on for Lenora's funeral. It's still buttoned. 6 o'clock, a knock at the back door. Russell standing on the step with a paper bag. "Harriet put together biscuits and gravy," he said, holding it out. "You need something in you before you get on the road." I took it from him. "I appreciate that." He studied my face. "You ready for this?" "Not even a little," I said. "But I'm going." The corner of his mouth moved. "Ed, that right there, that's what courage actually is. Not the absence of fear. It's moving forward anyway." I ate standing at the counter. Then I collected my keys, my wallet, and the folder Petra had assembled, every document organized and tabbed, and headed out to the truck. Russell was still at the end of his drive. He lifted a hand. I lifted mine. I backed out onto Ridgecrest Drive and pointed the truck west towards Salem. 2.5 hours. Highway 26 climbs up through the Cascade Mountains, threading between old-growth timber and cold rivers and towns that exist mostly to serve the logging trade. I clicked the radio off and drove in silence. I needed that silence. My mind went to Lenora, to the afternoon in 1987, when we'd stood together on a bare lot, nothing but dirt and scrub sage, and she'd said, "This is it, Edmund. This is where we're going to build our life." I thought about Audra, about the weight of her the day she came into the world, about steadying the back of her bike on a summer afternoon, about the way she'd drift off against my shoulder when she was still small enough to do that. I thought about Garrett, about the look on his face in my kitchen when he'd said, "You're pathetic." And then I thought about what I'd actually built. Not the house alone, a life, a foundation. Something that was supposed to be solid, supposed to last. Lenora always put it simply, if the foundation is strong, the structure will stand. I had built a strong foundation. But Garrett had spent 8 years working at the cracks. And today we'd find out whether it still held. I pulled into Salem at 9:30, eased into the lot across from the Oregon Lottery Commission. Building cut the engine and sat there gripping the wheel, trying to get my breathing under control. Then Petra's car swung in beside me. She got out and came over, rapped lightly on my window. I rolled it down. "Ready?" she asked. "As ready as I'll ever be." She smiled. "Then let's go get your house back." The Oregon Lottery Commission occupies a building on Liberty Street in downtown Salem. Glass and concrete, nothing fancy, but not nothing either. We walked through the front doors at 9:45 into a lobby with polished floors and fluorescent light humming overhead. A security guard checked our IDs, ran us through a metal detector, and pointed us toward the elevators. "7th floor," Petra said low. We rode up without speaking. My hands were steady. My thoughts were clear. I'd spent 2 solid weeks getting ready for this room, going over documents with Petra, running through answers, tracing the timeline until I could recite it in my sleep. I knew the facts cold. I knew the truth. The elevator doors slid open. The waiting area on the seventh floor was spare gray carpet, a handful of chairs, a water cooler tucked in the corner. And seated in those chairs, Garrett, Audra, and their attorney. Garrett had on a new suit, expensive fitted charcoal gray with a pale blue shirt. One leg crossed his arm, draped across the back of the empty chair beside him, the easy posture of someone who'd already decided how the day would end. Audra sat 2 chairs away, hands in her lap, eyes on her phone. She looked pale and worn out. Standing to their side was Norton Graves, 54, hair slicked silver, a good watch on his wrist leather briefcase open on the seat next to him as he worked through his notes. The elevator chimed behind me. All 3 heads came up. Garrett didn't rise. He just fixed me with a flat, unreadable look and didn't move an inch. A deliberate choice. A message. Audra's eyes flicked to me for just a second, then dropped back to her phone. That landed harder than anything Garrett had ever said to me. Petra's hand found my elbow. "This way, Ed." We crossed to the far side of the room and sat down. 10 feet of gray carpet between us and Garrett's table. It felt like a great deal more. At 9:55, the conference room door opened. A young woman with a commission badge leaned out. "We're ready." Garrett got to his feet, first moving into the room, as if he were taking possession of it. Audra followed with her head down. Norton Graves exchanged a professional nod, with Petra picked up his briefcase and went in. Petra and I were last. The conference room was long and narrow, a single table running its length with chairs lined up on either side. Windows looked down over the street, a whiteboard on one wall, water bottles and a box of tissues set out in the center of the table. At the head sat a man in his 60s gray hair, bifocals, an expression of settled patience. He rose as we came in. "Good morning, I'm Gerald Quinby, the mediator assigned to this matter. Please be seated." Garrett, Audra, and Norton settled on the right side of the table. Petra and I took the left. We faced each other across the width of it, with Gerald at the head between us. I was aware of everything, every sound, every shift. Audra was 2 seats down from Garrett, still not meeting my eyes. Garrett had leaned back, fingers laced, watching. Gerald straightened his glasses and opened his folder. "Let me outline the process. This is an informal mediation to resolve a dispute over ownership of Oregon Lottery ticket number 5839614D, purchased on April 3, 2023. My role is to guide the discussion and help both parties reach a resolution. I cannot impose an outcome, but my findings go to the commission and carry considerable weight. Everything said in this room is confidential unless both sides agree to waive that." He looked at each of us in turn. "Is that understood?" Everyone nodded. "Good." Gerald set his pen down and folded his hands on the table. "Let's begin. Mr. Graves, your client brought the initial claim. You may give your opening statement." Norton Graves stood. He buttoned his jacket, cleared his throat, and faced Gerald directly. "Thank you, Mr. Quinby. I represent Mr. Garrett Fenwick and Ms. Audra Calloway in this matter." He gestured toward them. Audra didn't look up. "The facts are not complicated," Norton continued. "On April 3rd, Edmund Calloway purchased 2 Mega Millions lottery tickets at a convenience store in Medford, Oregon. He came home and gave one of those tickets to his daughter Audra. Not conditionally, not as a loan, as a gift. No strings, no expectation of return. Under Oregon law, that is precisely what a gift is." Norton let a pause do its work. 3 weeks later, the ticket won $95 million. Ms. Calloway checked the numbers, confirmed what she had, and told her family. During those 3 weeks, Mr. Calloway expressed no interest whatsoever in the ticket he had given away, not until he found out what it was worth. Norton's delivery was smooth, unhurried. Oregon law recognizes informal transfers of personal property. A lottery ticket is personal property. When Mr. Calloway handed that ticket to his daughter and said, "Here you can have this ownership transferred," a change of heart after the fact does not undo a gift. He looked at Gerald. "We asked the commission to recognize Ms. Audra Calloway as the rightful owner of that ticket and authorize her to claim the prize." Norton sat. Garrett gave a small, satisfied dip of his chin. Audra kept her gaze on the table hands pressed together in her lap. Gerald made a note. Then he looked across to Petra. "Ms. Langford, your opening statement." Petra stood, and I knew this was it. Every hour of preparation, every document, every sleepless night came down to the next few minutes. I'd rehearsed this story with Petra more times than I could count. But sitting there with Audra 2 feet across the table, every rehearsed line dissolved. What remained was just the truth. Petra's posture was calm and certain. "Mr. Graves has described a portion of the facts," she said. "What he has not described are the facts that matter most." She drew 2 documents from her briefcase and laid them on the table in front of Gerald Quinby. "This," she said, placing her hand on the first page, "is the receipt from Valley Mart, Highway 62, Medford, Oregon. Date April 3rd, 2023. Time 2:17 p.m. 2 Mega Millions tickets purchased by debit card in the name of Edmund Calloway." She moved the second sheet forward. "This is Mr. Calloway's bank statement, a $4 charge from Valley Mart, same date, same time." Gerald leaned in, studying both pages through his bifocals. Petra kept going, her voice even. "Mr. Calloway bought both tickets. He paid for both tickets. Under Oregon law, he is the legal owner of both tickets." Norton Graves shifted in his chair. Garrett's jaw tightened slightly. "Mr. Calloway passed 1 ticket to his daughter, on an impulse," Petra continued. "A $2 slip of paper. At that moment, it was worth no more than a grocery receipt. But a lottery ticket worth $95 million is not a casual gesture. It is a significant asset, and Oregon lottery regulations require clear documentation in any ownership dispute. Mr. Calloway has that documentation. Mr. Fenwick does not." Gerald looked at me. "Mr. Calloway, can you confirm that you purchased these tickets on April 3rd? "Yes, sir." My voice came out quieter than I'd planned, but it held. "And you bought both in a single transaction?" "Yes. 2 tickets, $4 total." "Why 2? I glanced at Petra. She gave the slightest nod. "My friend Russell dared me to buy one," I said. "I figured if I was going in, I might as well get 2. It was 4. Winning never entered my mind. I just did it." Gerald wrote something down. "And you gave 1 ticket to your daughter?" "Yes." "Why?" I looked at Audra. She was studying the table, hands clasped tight. "Because she's my daughter," I said. "It was a small thing, a $2 ticket. I wanted her to have a little piece of it." Gerald's expression eased by a fraction. "Mr. Calloway, why did you file a dispute with the Lottery Commission?" I steadied myself and answered. 3 days after that ticket hit, my daughter's husband stood in my kitchen and told me to get out. The house I'd raised with my own 2 hands 36 years ago, the one Lenora and I poured ourselves into, he said it wasn't mine. He said the $95 million wasn't mine either. And then he went further than words. Norton leaned in. "Mr. Calloway, you're 72 years old. How sharp is your memory of April 3rd, specifically?" Petra's fingers pressed my forearm, a quiet signal. "Easy." "Sharp as it's ever been," I said. "Russell Drummond and I drove out to Valley Mart together. Clint Abernathy was behind the counter. He's the owner, 58 heavy-set gray and goatee canvas work shirt. He rang me up. I used my debit card. The receipt has been sitting in my wallet ever since." Norton's mouth tightened. He settled back. Petra went into her briefcase a second time, and what she produced wasn't a page. It was a full envelope. "One more matter," she said, and her tone had an edge now. "On April 8th, Mr. Fenwick walked into Umpqua Bank and submitted a power of attorney form asserting legal authority over Mr. Calloway's accounts." She placed a letter face up on the table. "The bank's response is right here. They rejected the filing because the signature didn't match what they had on record. The account was flagged. The bank considered it potential fraud." Gerald's eyebrows went up. He pulled the letter toward him. Petra laid a second sheet alongside it without pausing. "This is the police report Mr. Calloway filed with the Medford Police Department on April 9th. Case number 2022 MF03892. It formally documents an attempt at financial fraud by means of a forged legal instrument." The air went out of the room. Gerald turned his gaze to Garrett. "Mr. Fenwick, what do you say to this?" Color drained from Garrett's face. That was a misunderstanding." Petra didn't let it land. "A misunderstanding." Her voice was flat and sharp. "Your client put my client's forged signature on a legal document and handed it to a bank so he could empty the man's accounts. That isn't confusion. That's fraud. And it's one piece of a consistent pattern: threats, manipulation, coercion, and now a forged document, all pointed at one goal: taking what belongs to my client." Gerald pulled off his glasses and pressed 2 fingers to the bridge of his nose. "Mr. Graves, were you aware of this filing?" Norton Graves sat very still. When he spoke, it came out careful and quiet. "No, I was not." Gerald settled his glasses back on and held Garrett in a long, unflinching look. Mr. Fenwick submitting a forged power of attorney is a felony under Oregon law. Should this proceed past today criminal exposure is a real possibility for you. Garrett's mouth opened. Norton grabbed his arm before anything came out. We need to step out, Norton said tightly, and he all but pulled Garrett through the door. It clicked shut behind them. I sat with my hands flat on the table. My pulse was loud in my ears. Across from me, Audra had finally raised her head. Her eyes were wet. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the bank's letter, at the police report, at the documented record of what the man she'd married had tried to do. And for the first time in 8 years, I saw my daughter cry. When they called us back in from the break, Audra hadn't moved from her chair. It was 12:45. She had a fistful of crumpled tissues, and her eyes were swollen almost shut. Garrett was back beside her arms, folded jaw working. Norton Graves had gone to make a call and wasn't back yet. Gerald Quinby cleared his throat and turned toward Audra with a measured gentleness. Mrs. Calloway, I want to hear from you directly. Walk me through what happened the day your father gave you that ticket. Audra's voice was so low I could barely make it out. I'm not sure where to start. Start wherever feels right, Gerald said. Take the time you need. Do you remember that day? Yes. Did he say anything to you when he handed it over? Audra pressed her lips together. He said he'd bought a lottery ticket and that it was a dumb thing to do. He was laughing a little, smiling. She stopped. It was the first real smile I'd seen from him in months. Something tightened behind my ribs. Gerald said, Did he tell you the winnings would belong to you if it hit? No. Audra's voice was barely a thread. He just put it in my hand. I said, Thanks, Dad. That was the whole conversation. Gerald noted something. When the numbers matched what happened next, Audra's voice gave way at the seams. Garrett looked it up. He went wild with it. Kept saying we were rich, we were rich. He was on his phone within minutes. And your father? Audra looked down. Dad was just standing there, she whispered, like he didn't know where he was. Garrett adjusted in his seat. Gerald caught it and threw him a hard look, then brought his attention back to Audra. Mrs. Calloway, I want a straight answer, and I want it without you looking at anyone else in this room. Over those 8 years, did your father ever treat you badly? Did he make you feel like a burden? Did he ever use your situation against you in any way? The silence stretched, then tears started running down Audra's face again. No, Gerald leaned in. No, she shook her head. Dad never, not once. Every single thing he did for us was out of love. Garrett tried to get in front of it. Audra! But something had broken open in her, and her voice came out stronger than anything I'd heard from her in years. He never once complained that we were there, never once made us feel like we were in the way. She faced Gerald, words coming faster, running over each other. Garrett told me Dad resented us being in the house. He said Dad only kept us there out of guilt. He said Dad had been saying things about us to the neighbors, talking behind our backs. Her voice fractured. But Dad never said any of that. Garrett told me Dad said it, and I took Garrett's word over my own father's. Garrett went white. That is not, Audra turned on him. You told me he wanted us gone. You said he was too proud to admit it. I was looking out for you. Looking out for me. The words came out like a slap. From my own father, the man who opened his door to us when we had nowhere else to go. The room felt like something live. I sat there watching her, my eyes stinging. Audra turned back to Gerald, shaking but clear. My father did not want us to leave. Garrett did. Garrett worked to drive him out, and I stood by and let it happen. Garrett's chair scraped back hard. He was on his feet. This has gone far enough. Audra, let's go. Mr. Fenwick. Gerald's voice dropped and sharpened. Sit down. We are not obligated to. I'm not going, Audra said. Quiet. Final. Garrett stared at her. What did you say? I said I'm not going with you. Not now. Not after this. Garrett's face went through several colors. Audra, if you would just think for 1 second. I've done nothing but think, she said. For weeks. I'm finished. The door opened. Norton Graves stepped back into the room, read what was written on every face, and didn't say a word for a moment. He set his briefcase on the table. Mr. Quinby, I am withdrawing from this matter. Immediately. Garrett's head swung toward him. You cannot do that. I can... Norton said, no inflection. The fraud evidence and the testimony given in this room make it ethically impossible for me to continue. He turned towards Gerald. I'm sorry for the interruption. Then he picked up his case, looked once at Garrett, and said, You're going to need luck, Mr. Fenwick. He walked out. Quiet. Gerald looked at Garrett. Do you want to proceed without an attorney? Garrett stood rigid-chest, heaving. This whole thing is a setup. You're letting that old man... Sit down, Gerald said, voice like drawn wire. Or leave. Garrett looked at Audra. We are walking out of here right now. Audra didn't move. He said her name again. She said quietly, No. His face contorted. He turned to me. The look in his eyes was something I won't forget, pure, concentrated hatred. This isn't finished, he said. Then the door crashed open and shut, and he was gone. The room held its breath. Gerald let a long exhale go. Mrs. Calloway, how are you holding up? Audra shook her head slowly. Not well, but I'll get there. Gerald looked between the two of us then, toward Petra. I'm closing this mediation. My written findings will go out within 5 business days, but I don't think the outcome is in any real doubt. He met my eyes. Mr. Calloway, on the strength of the purchase documentation, the absence of any transfer record, the fraud evidence entered today, and Mrs. Calloway's testimony, my recommendation to the commission will be that ownership of the disputed ticket belongs to you. Something released in my chest that had been locked up for weeks. Petra's hand came down on my shoulder. Gerald rose. We're adjourned. People moved, gathered things, filed out. Gerald took his folder and left. Petra went to the hallway to make a call. And then it was just the two of us, me on one side of that long table, and Audra on the other, and neither of us speaking. After a while, Audra stood. She came around the table, one slow step at a time, both hands trembling at her sides. She stopped directly in front of me. Dad, she said, I'm sorry. We stood there together in that conference room. It felt like a long time. It was probably 3 minutes. We cried. She said sorry again. I told her I knew. Petra tapped on the door. We should head out. Audra took her car. I took mine. Whether I'd see her again, I truly didn't know. I pulled out of Salem at Tuzowar Highway 22, East Pointed home. 3 hours. The sun sat low and hard in my eyes the whole way. I kept thinking about Audra's face, about the fury in Garrett's, about what Gerald had said at the head of that table. I reached for the radio and turned it off. I needed quiet. Somewhere past the halfway point, the phone connected through the car speakers. Russell. Well, he asked. I let a second go by. I think I won. Another beat. And Audra, my voice caught. She broke down. She told the truth. She apologized. The line went quiet. Then Russell said soft and low, Good Ed. I turned onto Ridgecrest Drive at 5:00. Garrett's truck was in the driveway. Audra's sedan sat alongside it. I stayed behind the wheel a moment, hands resting, pulling myself together. Then I went in. Upstairs behind a closed door, I could hear Garrett moving around. Audra was in the kitchen back to me, standing over the sink. I came to the doorway. Audra. She went completely still. Something stiffened through her whole frame. I can't, she whispered. Not yet. I'm sorry. Then she slipped past me, eyes down, and climbed the stairs without another word. I stayed where I was in the kitchen alone, listening to footsteps cross the ceiling above me. Then the voices came through Garrett's, cutting and furious, and Audra's underneath it, softer, dissolving into crying. I thought about going up there, thought about hammering on that door until she answered, but I held back. It wasn't my ground to stand on anymore. Friday morning, Garrett was out the door at 8:00. Didn't set foot back inside until well after 10 that night. Lining up a new attorney, I figured, plotting his next move. I didn't press him. That afternoon, I was in the workshop, working the legs of a small table I'd had going for a while when a folded piece of paper appeared under the door. I put down what I was doing and picked it up. One fold. Audra's handwriting. Dad, I'm sorry. I don't know how to face you. I don't know how to fix what I did. I'm scared. But I need you to know I love you. I always have. Audra. I sank onto the workbench, held that note, and wept. Saturday and Sunday crawled past. The whole house felt loaded, ready to go off. Garrett gave me a wide berth. When we happened into the same hallway, he stared at me with open contempt, but said nothing. I caught sight of Audra twice. First time was in the upstairs corridor. She stopped short when she saw me. We held each other's gaze for a long beat. Then she breathed, "Hi, Dad," and slipped away. Second time I spotted her through the window, still in her car in the driveway, face pressed into her hands, shoulders shaking. I wanted to go out there, but I didn't have anything to offer her right then that she was ready to take. Russell came by Saturday afternoon with a loaf of Harriet's banana bread. "You holding up?" he asked. I shrugged. 8 years living under that roof with those two, and I still don't know how to reach her. Russell gave a slow nod. "Garrett's done, but give Audra time, Ed. Let her get there herself." Sunday. I did something I hadn't done since we buried Lenora. I went to church. Rogue Valley Community Church was exactly as memory had kept it, those worn wooden pews, the colored light through the stained glass, the smell of old hymnals and wood polish unchanged. As I was heading out after the service, Pastor Dolores caught up with me, her manner warm and unhurried. "I heard things went well at the mediation," she said. "I believe so," I told her. "Should know for certain this week." Then she asked about Audra. I looked away. "She's struggling." Pastor Dolores rested her hand briefly on my arm. "She'll work through it. She has the truth now. That's always the hardest part to carry." I drove home and spent the rest of the afternoon in the workshop carving a small wooden cross from a scrap block. I wasn't sure who it was meant for. Maybe Lenora, maybe me. Monday I was up at 5. Sleep had barely come. Coffee, a piece of toast, the kitchen table waiting. The phone never rang. Tuesday, Wednesday, nothing. Thursday morning, May 9th, awake again at 5. Showered, dressed, more coffee, watching the phone. At 10:15 it finally rang. Petra. Second ring. "Hello, Ed." Her voice was level, but I could hear something underneath it. "We won." I dropped hard into the nearest chair. "Gerald issued his findings this morning. The commission accepted his recommendation. The ruling is in your favor. Garrett's claim rejected. You are recognized as the legal owner of both tickets." I couldn't get a word out. Both tickets. Both, I managed after a moment. No transfer agreement, no contract, nothing signed, nothing. "Ed, you're receiving $95 million. I sat without moving, staring at the wall. $95 million. Both tickets. Petra laid out the rest. Submit the winning, tickets start. The official process, 11 days of verification, then $95 million, which comes to $47.5 million after taxes. I held the phone to my ear and tried to make those numbers feel like something real. Then she moved to the eviction notices. Oregon law requires 60 days. 60 days, I repeated. "I'll draw them up today. Send them whenever you're ready." They arrived by email that afternoon. I printed 2 copies, one for Garrett, one for Audra, and left them on my desk. Stared at them for an hour. Russell phoned. "Have you sent them?" "Not yet." "What are you waiting on?" "I don't know." Tuesday, May 14th, I finally did it. Handing those envelopes over face to face, that wasn't something I could bring myself to do. So I laid them on the kitchen table, name side up, and drove over to Russell's house. 2 hours later, I pulled back in. Garrett's truck was gone. The envelopes were gone. And someone had driven a fist through the living room wall. Lenora's framed photograph, always on the mantel, was on the floor, the glass broken to pieces. I lifted it with unsteady hands. Russell had been right to get me out of the house first. Upstairs, the bedroom door was shut. I knocked. "Audra." Quiet. "Come in, Dad." She was sitting on the edge of the bed, an open suitcase next to her clothes in neat folded stacks. "He's gone," she said. "Motel somewhere. Said a lot of things I'd rather not repeat." "Are you all right?" "No, but I'm not hurt." She met my eyes. 60 days, Oregon law. You don't need to apologize, Dad." "I'm sorry, Audra." She shook her head. "Don't. You had every right." She paused. "I'll be out in 2 weeks. Garrett's picking up the rest of his things tomorrow. I just need a few days to sort out where I'm headed." "You can stay the full 60 if that's what you need," I said. Audra shook her head. "I can't be here. Not after everything I did." I had 100 things to say. None of them surfaced. "Okay," was all I had. Wednesday the 15th. Petra and I made the drive to Salem. The Oregon Lottery Commission was on the 3rd floor of a nondescript gray government building. Everything was formal and precise. ID verification, ticket submission, triplicate paperwork. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with reading glasses, looked up and offered a measured smile. "Congratulations, Mr. Calloway. Your claim will be processed over the next 11 business days. We'll be in touch for final disbursement." She slid a receipt across to me. Official claim code. $95 million minus taxes, $47.5 million, life-changing money. But it didn't feel like anything yet. In the parking lot, Petra asked, "How do you feel?" "Empty," I said. "That'll pass," she said. "Give yourself room." She paused. "I want to bring in Roberta Strand, a financial advisor I trust completely. You'll need accounts, investments, estate planning set up properly. It felt like too much to hold at once, one step at a time. Driving back, I kept hearing Lenora's voice in my head. Don't let money change who you are. I won't, Nora, I said quietly. I promise. Thursday the 16th, a moving truck was in the driveway by 10:00 in the morning. Garrett's doing. I stayed in the workshop and watched through the glass. He ran the whole operation from the yard, pointing, raising his voice, pushing those movers hard. Out went the furniture, the boxes, the TV, the sofa, the kitchen table. By afternoon, it was loaded. Garrett crossed to the workshop door and stood in front of the glass without knocking. You think you won, but you didn't. You lost your daughter. You'll die alone in this house counting your money. That's what you deserve. He held it a moment, then turned his back and walked away. The truck pulled out, his car behind it, gone. I stood in the doorway. The stillness that settled over the place was something I hadn't felt in a long time. A strange loosening in the chest, not joy, just quiet. Over the following days, Audra was still there working through her packing. We'd cross paths in the hall, a clipped good morning, a stiff good night. Civil, nothing more. 3 evenings after Garrett left, I was making a simple pasta dinner when she came downstairs. Smells good, Dad. There's enough for 2, I said, if you want. A beat. Yes, thank you. We sat across from each other. Quiet, but not the same kind of quiet as before. Dad? Yeah. I'm filing for divorce. Called a lawyer today. Good. She studied her plate. Going to find a place to rent. Start over. Maybe look for work. It's been 8 years. You'll manage, I said. You're stronger than you think. I don't feel strong. Being strong isn't a feeling, I said. It's a decision. She smiled just barely. You sound exactly like Grandpa. He'd say that same thing. He was a wise man. 3 days on, I drove to the hardware store for sandpaper. Came home to find her car gone. Her room empty, put back in order. Bed made, floor vacuumed clean. On the kitchen counter was an envelope with my name on the front. My hands were unsteady as I opened it. 2 pages handwritten in Audra's careful script. It began, Dear Dad. It ended, I love you. What the envelope held was everything she couldn't bring herself to say out loud. I sat down at the kitchen table and pulled it open. 2 sheets of paper, written front and back, every line filled with her hand. The ink had bled in spots. She'd been crying the whole time she wrote it. Dear Dad, I'm putting this down on paper because I can't look you in the face and say it. I'm sorry. Those 2 words aren't close to enough, but they're all I've got. I'm sorry for the past 8 years, for letting Garrett treat you like you were nobody, for keeping quiet when he told you to get out of your own home, the home you built, the home where Mom spent her life, for choosing his version of things over what I already knew to be true. For 8 years, Garrett drilled it into me that you resented us, that you were too proud to say so, but secretly wanted us gone, that you badmouthed us to the neighbors, that you were growing old and bitter and impossible. I swallowed all of it. I'm so ashamed of myself. The honest answer is it was easier to take his word for it than to face what I was doing. I could see we were using you. I knew Garrett was using you, but admitting it meant I'd have to do something about it. I was too beaten down, too frightened, too caught up in needing him to act. This marriage took everything from me. Dad, I look at who I've been and I don't know that person. A woman who sold out her own father to protect a man who felt nothing for her. I get it now. Garrett didn't choose me out of love. He saw an opening, a house, and money somewhere down the line. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for a place back in your world. But I need you to know I love you and I always have. Even in the years I couldn't show it. Even when I put him first. I've filed for divorce. I'm getting my own apartment. I need to find out who I am when none of this is around me. I'll understand if you want no part of me. But if there's any chance I'll be at your door in 3 days, I'll knock, and if you can't open it, I'll understand that too. I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry, Audra. I finished the last line, set it down, and put my face in my hands. The grief came for all of it. 8 years gone, Audra's pain. Lenora absent from a moment she should have been part of. But underneath it was something else. Hope. She was coming back. 3 days. Those 3 days I kept myself busy cleaning, ran the vacuum through the living room, wiped the dust off Lenora's photograph. The glass was new. Now scrubbed down the kitchen, even tidied the guest room, though I couldn't say exactly why. Russell came by on the 2nd day and found me working the countertops with a cloth. You keep at that, and you'll wear clean through the granite, he said. I handed him the letter without a word. He read it through carefully, then folded it along the creases and gave it back. She's coming home, Ed. It's not her home anymore. Home's not a building, Russell said. It's the people in it. The third day nearly broke me. I was wide awake at 5, no chance of sleep. Made coffee paste, drifted to the window. By noon, I'd half convinced myself she wasn't coming. At 4:00, a car turned in. Audra's. My heart seized. I stood still, tracking the sound of her steps across the porch. A knock. I made my feet move. I went to the door, pulled in a breath, and opened it. Audra was standing there in jeans and a sweater, her eyes raw and swollen from crying on the drive over. "Hi, Dad," she whispered. "Hi, sweetheart." Neither of us moved. Neither of us knew where to start. "Come in," I managed. She took the sofa. I took my chair. The silence between us stretched out. "Did you read it?" she asked. 3 times. I meant every word. "I know." Nothing more for a moment. I leaned toward her. "Audra, there's something I need you to hear." She held my gaze, fear and hope pulling at her face equally. "I forgive you," I told her. She caught her breath. "Truly," I went on. "But forgiveness isn't the same as going back to the way things were. Those 8 years happened. We can't undo them. What we can do is begin again, not as a father and daughter under one roof, but as 2 people who love each other and are willing to do the work of trusting again." Her eyes filled. "I want that. It won't come easy. I know it takes time and it takes honesty. I'm willing, Dad. I give you my word." I looked at her a long time. I could see Lenora in her face, the shape of her eyes, the line of her mouth. But I also saw someone who'd been lost and was trying to claw her way back. "Then I'm willing too." Audra broke. Her hands went over her face and she sobbed deep, heaving sobs. I got up, went to her, sat down right beside her. She turned into my shoulder. I put my arms around her. 8 years. The first time in 8 years, I'd held my daughter. She cried. I cried. We sat there together a long time. Finally, Audra pulled back and dried her eyes. "What a wreck I am." "You're entitled." A small, wet laugh came out of her. "Could we try something? What, Sunday dinners every week the way Mom always did?" Those words hit me square in the chest. Lenora's Sunday dinners, beef stew and cornbread. All 4 of us at the table when life was still whole. "I'd like that," I said. Audra nodded. "And I want to pay you back the rent, utilities, all of it. I have to own what I did. I wanted to wave it off, but I could see this was part of her healing." "All right. We'll set up a payment plan you can manage." "Thank you." We went on talking for another hour. She told me about her apartment, a small 1-bedroom downtown, putting a resume together after 8 years looking for work. The divorce was moving ahead, though Garrett was fighting it. She'd gotten into therapy twice a week. "I have a lot to sort through," she said. "That takes real courage. I don't feel courageous." "Courage isn't a feeling," I told her. "It's a decision." She gave me a real smile. "You sound like Grandpa. He was a wise man." A while later, she checked the clock. I should head out. I walked her to the door. "Dad, yes, I love you. I love you too, Audra Bear." She stopped cold. "You haven't said that since I was small. You'll always be my Audra Bear." Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling through them. She hugged me hard. "Thank you." Then she walked out. I stood on the porch watching until her tail lights were gone, went inside, and let the door hold me up. For the first time in months, I could breathe again. That evening, I sat on the back porch and watched the sky change. Orange and pink and purple above the mountains. I turned it all over in my mind, the lottery, the betrayal, the fight, the win. And now this. The start of something I had figured was lost for good. "I'm proud of you." Edmund Lenora's voice came to me quietly. "I hope so, Nora," I whispered. My phone buzzed, a text from Audra. "Thank you for giving me a second chance. See you Sunday. I love you." I smiled and wrote back, "I love you too." 5:00 p.m., Sunday. I'll make beef stew. Perfect. That night, I slept in my own bed in my own house. Audra's letter was on the nightstand. Sunday dinner was on the calendar. Morning came, and sunlight fell through Lenora's curtains, the ones she'd sewn by hand 30 years ago. I lay there watching the light move and understood something clearly. I hadn't just won a lottery, I had gotten my life back. The money landed in my account on Tuesday, June 18th, $47,500,000. I stared at it for 20 minutes, then called Russell. "It's real," I said. "So, what do you do now?" "Anything I want, I earned it." Next day, I drove downtown to meet Roberta Strand, the financial advisor Petra had sent me to. leather chairs, mountain views through the window. Roberta was 56, gray-haired, direct. Ed, what do you need this money to do? I want security. I want to take care of my daughter, and I want to honor my wife. We sat together for 2 hours building a plan. Roberta laid out diversification index funds, bonds, real estate trusts, savings. Now this gives you about $1.5 million a year in passive income while preserving your principal. You can live well and still put real money behind causes that matter. Something lit up in me. What if I wanted to help elderly people whose own families were robbing them, driving them out of their homes, leaving them with no legal help because they couldn't afford it? Roberta smiled. Now, a legal protection fund. With $20 million, you could fund it in perpetuity. I thought of Lenora, who had never once looked away from someone who needed defending. I want to build that. I called Petra. I want to establish the Callaway Elder Protection Fund, $20 million for elderly victims of financial abuse. I want you as legal director and Cecilia Varga as consultant. Petra's voice caught. Ed, that's incredible. In July, we made it official. Petra opened an office out in Eugene. Cecilia came on 3 days a week. By September, we had our first case, an 82-year-old woman whose son had forged power of attorney to take her home. Petra won in 6 weeks. The woman phoned me afterward crying, "You saved my life." "No, ma'am. Your money did the saving. We just handed you the means." Before the year closed out, 47 people had been helped by that fund. Lenora would have loved knowing it existed, but something in me still wasn't settled. August came and I listed the Ridgecrest Drive place. Russell drove over. "You certain every stick in those walls I put there alongside Lenora, every nail. But what Garrett and Audra did left a mark I couldn't scrub away. I needed to go somewhere new, where the coast, Brookings, salt air, open water, room to breathe again. Gone in 3 weeks, sold to a young family, 2 kids, a fresh chapter for those walls. I packed light, Lenora's photograph, my tools, a few pieces of furniture. Late August, I closed on a place in Brookings glass and timber above the Pacific. A workshop in the back windows cracked so the sound of the surf came through. Not the home Lenora and I raised from bare ground, but it was mine now. That first morning, I walked straight down to the water. The sun broke the horizon and threw orange and gold across the whole sky. Salt in the air. Something close to freedom. Russell and Harriet came out regularly. We'd pace the shoreline, then sit on the deck with our coffee. One afternoon, Harriet looked at me. "You seem lighter," she said. She had it right. 8 years of dead weight, and I'd finally let it go. Audra made the drive every other Sunday. 3 hours out of Medford, never once missed. We'd put together beef stew the way Lenora used to cook it. Eat on the deck while the sun dropped. September brought her divorce through. "How do you feel?" I asked. "That's free scared, but free." October, she landed work at the Medford Community Center. $50 an hour. Not a lot, she said. But I earned it. Haven't earned my own way in 8 years. I told her I was proud. You mean it, every word. December. I helped carry boxes into her apartment. Small, clean hers. Doesn't amount to much. It's exactly right, I told her. Christmas was still. Just the 2 of us at the beach house. Audra showed up with cookies a little overdone around the edges. I made beef stew. We traded gifts. I gave her a photo album Lenora had put together. She handed me a framed photograph of Lenora and me from the 90s, pulled it from a box in storage, figured it belonged with you. I broke down, the 2 of us at Christmas. No one else needed to be there. It was whole. Then spring arrived, April 2024, a full year since the mediation. One morning, I was out in the garden pressing daffodil bulbs into the ground. Lenora's flower. I was 73 and still had the strength for it. A car stopped out front. Audra gloves already on. "Morning, Dad. Thought you could use another pair of hands. You didn't need to come. I wanted to." We got down in the dirt side by side, tucking bulbs into the earth where Lenora's garden had grown. "Dad." "Yeah. Thank you for not walking away from me. Walking away from you was never something I could do. Garrett did." "I'm not Garrett." "No, you're not. We stood work done and knocked the soil off our knees. When did these come up?" "Late spring, maybe May. Mom would have loved this. She would." We settled onto the deck steps, morning warm, the ocean laid out before us. I looked at all of it, the house I'd chosen, my daughter beside me, the garden going in, the life I'd clawed back. "I used to think a house was just structure," I said. "Boards and nails, things you measure." Audra listened. "But it's not that. A house is what happened inside it. The people who gave it meaning. Your mother's laugh, your first steps, The hard times, the making up, the love running beneath all of it. Is that why you fought so hard? Because if Garrett had taken it, it would have meant none of it was real. That 36 years with your mother could be undone by greed. Not fighting for money, fighting for meaning. Audra rested her head on my shoulder. You won, Dad. We both did. I sat with that. The Pacific going on to the horizon, the lottery ticket, the betrayal, the long fight, the win, the fun that reached 47 people. Audra free and mending. Lenora's memory still standing. And that is where Edmund Calloway's story finally rests. Not in bitterness, but in something quieter and harder, one than anger ever could be. This fight cost him sleep security and years of peace he should have been allowed to keep. It asked him to stand up inside his own home and say no. This is mine, and what happened here mattered. I believe God doesn't allow those seasons of loss to be wasted, that the people who endure them come out holding something the comfortable never quite find. Edmund came out holding his dignity, his daughter, and Lenora's memory kept whole. If this family revenge story taught me anything worth passing on, it's this. First, document everything, even when you trust the people around you. A paper trail is not paranoia, it's protection. Second, if you are an adults 50 plus and someone tries to convince you that your mind or your rights are slipping, fight that lie with every legal tool available to you. Third, never sign anything under pressure. Walk away, get counsel, and read every word. Fourth, when a child wrongs you, the door to reconciliation is yours to open or keep closed, but forgiveness when it comes is for you as much as for them. If Edmund's story moved something in, you share it with someone who needs to hear it. A neighbor, a sibling, a friend who has been told to be quiet and accept less than they deserve. Stories like this one deserve to travel. Leave a comment and tell me which moment stayed with you longest. And if you haven't already subscribed to Honor Revenge Stories so the next one finds you, thank you for spending this time with me. Take good care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next story.